Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those joining us from other time zones. Welcome to today's webinar on sustainable innovations for home decorations and textile businesses. We're very excited to have you and hope you look forward to hearing more about material innovations, sustainable product development, and of course, how you can best keep your audience and your buy-ins interested by applying these innovations and developments. So I'm Simone Snuyembo. I work as a program manager at CBI, the organization hosting today's webinar. And we have a very exciting list of experts and guest speakers lined up for you today. But before I hand it over to them, I'd just like to give you a quick introduction to our platform, to CBI as an organization, and to the kind of information that we have available to you beyond this webinar. So if we could go back to the previous slide. Just a quick introduction to the platform. Some of you may be familiar with it, but for those of you who aren't, just a couple of house rules. So today we're using GoToWebinar. It's very important that you be aware that we cannot see or hear you. So your camera isn't on and your mic is not activated as well. If everything is going well, of course, you should be able to hear and see us for the duration of the webinar. But the only way for you to communicate and interact with us will be through the chat option. And please don't be shy, we'd really encourage it. Make use of the question tab on the side of the GoToWebinar module. And just feel free to ask questions as our experts introduce new topics to you and give you examples. They'll be able to see your questions and answer it throughout the webinar. If for some reason they don't manage to get to one of your questions, we'll keep tab of them and we'll get back to them and send you a document with the answers after the webinar. There may be polls popping up. I believe this webinar doesn't have any, so you won't need to make use of that function. And last but not least, it's important that you be aware that this session is being recorded. We will be uploading it after, and you will also be receiving the slides. So please don't be taking notes for the entire duration. You'll be getting the slides, you'll be getting a recording as well. And if you have any colleagues or friends that you know are interested in today's webinar, but for some reason we're not able to join, you can tell them that they'll be able to follow this online anyway. So moving on to CBI. CBI is hosting today's webinar, and the organization, so the CBI, the letters stand for the Center for the Promotion of Imports for Developing Countries. So we are part of a government agency. We're part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency and are funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. And what's our mission? We support SMEs to strengthen their sustainability through their exports. It's a big mission. How do we actually do that? We offer practical solutions for bottlenecks in the export value chain. And one of these bottlenecks that we know SMEs often face, of course, is the lack of information about markets, about trends, and about opportunities. So that's how we try to create value for the kind of SMEs that we work with and that we work for, by sharing knowledge and deploying our networks to make sure that you have access to the kind of information that'll allow you to become more sustainable and to access exciting markets such as the European one. Moving on to the next slide. So when I talk about sharing information and sharing knowledge, what am I really talking about? It's the CBI market intelligence, which is a very large component of what we do, and we attempt to the gap for the information gap for SMEs. The market information and market intelligence that CBI provides is given for free on our website. You can see the link above, cbi.eu. And it's really tailored to provide practical information for currently exporting or aspiring exporting SMEs, with a big focus on the European markets. As I mentioned before, it provides practical information to identify opportunities, to find the export channels that will be most effective at getting your product or services on the market, and of course to prepare for this type of access. So we work on a number of sectors, of which home decorations and home textiles is a very important one. As you can see in this screenshot of our website, all you have to do is enter cbi.eu and then click on the market information tab at the top. and you'll immediately see all our information and our market intelligence divided by sectors. So home decoration and home textiles is one, and if you click in it, you'll be able to have completely free access to all the studies and other types of information that we provide for SMEs and PSOs such as you. So moving on to the next slide. Just a quick sneak peek into the kind of studies that we have available. Now, our information is broadly divided, let's say, into two types of studies. On one hand, it's a market analysis that aim to provide you a better understanding of what the market looks like, how it's changing, where it's moving towards. And then there's studies that really focus on market entry. So if you've identified some interesting potential or opportunities, what do you need to do and what steps do you need to take to be able to access that market and make use of the opportunities? When it comes to the market analysis, of course, we provide studies that look at the demand in Europe. What are the most promising countries in Europe? Because of course, we often see it as one market, but there are very big differences in terms of business practices, consumer preferences. So it might be interesting to also look at specific countries and how the preferences differ. We also look at what the latest trends are. Can we go back? Yes. We also look at what the latest trends are and what the tips can be to make use of and take advantage of the latest opportunities deriving from these trends. When it comes to the information about market entry, so how to access the market, we have detailed information about what the requirements are of buyers on the European side, some practical tips for how you can get started finding these buyers, and as well business tips for better understanding the business culture in Europe and how you can build successful relationships. And finally, of course, if you found a buyer, you've been able to engage with them, we also have tips for organizing your experts with all the practical information about logistics, transport, the kind of documentation you'll need, packaging, customs, and so forth. It's important also for you to know that our information that we provide as market intelligence is not limited to studies only. So we also provide fact sheets on very specific products. We also provide news items that'll keep you up to date on the latest information that we have published on our website. And very importantly, of course, we also have free webinars. So all the previous editions of these webinars have been published on our YouTube page. Feel free to check them out. And as I mentioned, this one will also end up on our YouTube page and can also always be looked at in the future. So moving on to the webinar, I'd like to actually introduce the team that will be presenting for you today. So firstly, we have Karina Motzer. Karina has been the lead researcher. There you go. If everything is going well, you can see her now. She's been lead researcher for this sector for CBI, and she's been market researcher at Globally Cool since 2014. Nice to have you with us, Karina. Secondly, we have Kees Bronk. Kees has 30+ years of experience in the sector in export-oriented business development. He was initially employed by a fair trade importer wholesaler, and today is self-employed as an independent consultant. So we're lucky at CBI to be able to make use of his experience and his knowledge to help us out in the market intelligence. He has a very clear focus on sustainability in business, which I'm sure we'll hear a lot about in today's webinar. Thanks, Kees.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Remco Kemper. Remco is an entrepreneur, works in international product development, and is a business consultant for the sector of all things related to home decoration and home textiles. He's been working for the public sector and for public institutions since 1995, also with CBI, and is the owner of Coca Bags, which you can check out at the website as it's put there. We can't see you right now, Remco, but I'm sure you'll pop up eventually during the webinar. Yes, we do also have a surprise guest speaker that'll join us later today, but I'll keep that as a surprise for now. And Kees, I believe it's on to you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see so many familiar and unfamiliar names and even faces. So today we're going to talk about alternative sustainable materials. So alternative has something which says new, innovative, and sustainable has something sustainable to it. So let's look at what we're trying to tell you today. Not just tell you, some of you have joined our webinars before, and so I'd really like to welcome you to participate in the discussion with us. So use the question box as much as you want to, and we'll always select the best, most interesting, most peppy questions and discuss them with you. So don't hesitate and talk to us. Right. Remco, can you show your face as well? Okay, let's just start. Here we go.
Yes, we're going to start with a small movie where Case does an interview at the Ambiente Trade Fair, where many of you have been.
So, what happened there, Remco? What did you think from it?
Well, there's two things which I found in this interview, which I really, really liked. The one thing which is not the most obvious one, because obviously he starts talking about the material, that rather than having a plastic, which is based on the classic crude oil, they have used a bio-based material. So that's one thing. That's you could say is the more obvious thing. What I also liked is that he said the designs we use are looking good today, but they are made in such a way that they will also be looking good in 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 to 10 years from now. So he's also promoting a timeless type of design. And that's another angle, which I find very interesting, to be honest.
Cool, cool. He also said, well, almost like behaving like a startup. Huh? What is he saying there?
Well, I mean, he's becoming
Remco,
more.
Let's see your face. Remco, let's see your face.
Oh, that's very hard because then I have to get out of this presentation.
Okay, I'll see your face later then. Let's continue.
Yeah, okay.
It's like talking to a wall. Talking about the wall, what are we seeing here? Yeah, the next one is nice. What are we seeing there?
Where? Sorry.
This one.
Here?
Yeah.
Yes.
This one.
Yeah, basically, this also refers to a conversation we had yesterday with somebody else. But what they're trying to do here, you could say, is a race to the top, in the sense that they are promoting themselves as a sustainable brand, and they're really trying to on these values which they have created for themselves, they really try to create a position for themselves in the market, and it's a position which holds a long future, I would say.
Yeah, and it also says, you know, becoming sustainable is a process. You're not totally perfectly sustainable overnight, but you're maybe climbing towards it. And the other thing also what he said was, I asked him specifically, so I mean, obviously Daniel is the new generation in the company. It's a family business. Koziol is actually the family name. And so here we see him climbing on top and then his dad following, which, how cool is that? So they're also saying, yes, new generations come in to businesses and try to create the changes. And so an excellent example, I feel, of what's happening also in our industry. And obviously, this is the big business side. Koziol is a famous brand already, and they're at the heart of this plastic tableware segment. And now you can be sure that all the competitors in the same kind of segment are looking at them and saying, ooh, wow, are we now losing competition? Are we losing the race to them? Because they are now also totally sustainable. And again, remember that their plastic was the key material, the core material of their business. And they changed their DNA in a way, which I think is extremely brave. That's why I really wanted to talk to them. And I hope we're all inspired by it.
Yes,
okay.
And you see that the knowledge they have, because you could see that Daniel is actually almost standing on the shoulders of his father. So they have a large experience, and this large experience also helped them in changing their business model.
Cool. Okie dokie. So we did this as part of a guided tour for the Ethical Style Guide catalog. Maybe you could show us the next one. Yeah, this is next one. Yeah, here we go.
There you go.
Ethical Style Guide is the Messe Frankfurt tool for exhibitors in Ambiente Trade Fair and a few other fairs like Christmas World and Creative World, for any participants who have sustainable angles. And so those who are participating and are confident that they have a specific sustainable angle, they can register, and then they get this green shield in their booth. It's Ambiente's way, or Messe Frankfurt's way of saying, yeah, let's make sustainability part of our normal business conversation. We talk about price, we talk about quality and design, but we also talk about sustainability. I think this makes Messe Frankfurt for sure one of the forerunners in that industry, because also this Messe has competitors in Stockholm, in Paris, and I'm sure also they are in competition with those fairs. And this is for them also a way of saying, yeah, we are supporting this trend, and we're really serious about it.
But you can also say, Case, that in the interview, when you started the interview, you say that sustainability is getting out of its niche and becoming more mainstream. And the fact that such a large commercial trade fair like Messe Frankfurt is investing in this ethical style guide also indicates that sustainability is really something of our daily lives now, and not just like an exceptional tree hugger kind of thing.
Exactly. We've left that niche kind of thinking behind. All right,
yeah,
let's move on. So today we're going to look at 3 directions just for the sake of discussion. You will see that some of the directions are blurring or merging into each other. Don't worry about that. But we're looking at it from 3 angles: harvesting abundance, we call it. We'll explain later. Engineering nature, as well as rethinking waste. So let's tackle the first one. Harvesting abundance. What do we actually mean here? Okay, it's about agricultural produce, maybe leftovers or byproducts which are not used, are now picked up by people who are kind of innovating that material into products for home and other industries. So it's an agri products, and also natural products which are designed into new innovative applications. And let's show some examples. All right, so from pineapple leaf, they're making fake leather, replacing regular leather, and using it in different applications. And it's maybe already the most well-known example of agricultural side product being used for, let's say, a textile applications. We already know it quite a lot. It's been in the news a lot, and that tells you that if you start experimentally at some stage, it can also become a commercial success, which I think this has really been a commercial success. What are the things that you take from this, Remco, when you see the movie? What strikes you?
What struck me is that these people behind Pinatex, they are go-getters, because it took them 7 years to develop this process. Yeah. And that means you have to be in it for the long run. And they didn't give up. They held on, and you could say that well, they've deserved the commercial success which they have been able to derive from this particular model. And so again, what you also mentioned earlier, Case, it's always a process, and some things can go quickly, but other things, they take major research and development, and that can take a while. I also know an example of for CBI, I work in Bangladesh, and for a long time we have been trying to develop a bioplastic made out of jute. Now this process has been going on for years, and finally it's showing some results, but it's not perfect yet. So that means we still have to wait, we still have to dig in, and in order to get that plastic made out of jute, rather than having that oil-based plastic that we've been using so far. So yeah, one of the lessons that I derive from this movie is that in some cases you really have to be tenacious, and you really have to be in it for the long term.
Right, I'm just being corrected by one of you. It's called Pinatex. So thank you for that. I want to be correct. Yes, and also what struck me was that it was like somebody, the business owner or designer, had a very personal motive. She actually got shocked by what she saw around her in terms of climate change and pollution. And so sometimes change can also come from the heart, from a personal motivation. and then it becomes a business model, like in this case. So that's maybe one of the drivers. Could also be just a person who's influential in a business, wants to create that change from a personal point of view, feeling better about their products. All right, let's move on.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter if it's science or art or poetry. I mean, all these kind of things can help in stimulating people's thoughts and making developments happen. So in that sense, I think it's very, very useful, because some major developments have started with a single idea, and it could be the idea of a scientist, it could be the idea like the Pinatex lady, it could be this example, and it can inspire others to use technology or develop technology themselves in order to create more sustainable products. So yes, I think it's very relevant, even though in this case, it didn't concern a practical piece of furniture. Like you said, it's more like a conceptual piece of furniture, but it does give the opportunity to research this technique further and maybe apply it in such a way that it becomes a commercial product.
Exactly. So, quite often designers, they have the time, they don't have the immediate commercial pressure like a Cosio would have, and they'd have to continue performing in the market. So designers can give things some more thought, they can go deeper into issues, into trends, and take a little bit more time coming up with more future-oriented thinking, which really clearly this is. They're making a statement about how we can use nature and also using 3D technology. So it's kind of an interesting mix of technology, now technology and nature, which has been there forever. It's the root system of mushrooms that they are using in a 3D printed technology. So yes, clearly making a statement, and also in that sense, designers, even though they're not immediately producing a functional product, can look into the future and talk to us and say, this is what's going to happen or needs to happen. We need to be more careful with nature, Mother Nature, and use more materials if we can. So designers also have part of this whole innovative approach to sustainability.
Yes, and this is about fungi, and they are basically also being used these days to develop natural dyes, which allow for much brighter colors than the traditional natural dyes. So you see that this technology is also being used in other areas in textiles. So it is very.
There you go. Okay, so it's not just Western brands or brands from more industrialized areas in the world, but also us, you sitting there listening to us, you're also creating lots of new initiatives. And Remco, you have a few examples for us.
Well, this is one of the companies we work with within the scope of the CBI Home Decoration, Home Textiles program in Bangladesh. And it's a relatively, you could say, simple example, in the sense that this company, Artisan House, they use a very well-known raw material, jute. The best jute in the world is found in Faridpur, a region in Bangladesh. And it's always been a material which has been perceived as very crude. It was traditionally used to make those gunny sacks, potato sacks, etc. And it is also a fiber that has certain disadvantages, like it breaks very easily and then it gets relatively dusty. However, if you take such a fiber, because the good thing about jute is that you can grow it without the use of extra water, without the use of pesticides, and it is completely biodegradable. So if you have a 100% jute product and it's come to the end of its lifespan, you can just easily put it on your compost heap or recycle it together with your vegetables, etc., etc. And what Artisan House has done with the jute, they have added value by making beautiful designs, finishing it very well. Their artisans, they knot and weave it together in such a way that it looks appealing. So they've taken a rather crude fiber that, however, has fantastic sustainable features, and they made it into a beautiful product. So they literally added value by good artistic approach, good design, and good finish.
Cool. We're very open to any of your examples. So use the question box to describe to us what you are doing in this sense. Maybe we should skip the next one and go to the tree bark one, just for the sake of time, Remco.
Yeah, you want to go to the tree bark one. Yeah, this is a classic one. This is from East Africa, from Uganda. This company also used to participate in a CBI program, and they use the bark of a tree for a kind of a textile. It's not a traditional textile. You could say it is a non-woven textile. It's a fig tree. The whole process has been judged by UNESCO as a how do you call that, Case? One of those processes which are a heritage process. That's the word I was looking for. And what they do, because it is a strong material, but sometimes it's just not strong enough. So you could see in the picture how they use embroidery to fortify the material. And so a technical necessity they also take as a cue to work on the design. And here you see they have made a range of cushions, but they use it in other areas also. They, for instance, also make small pouches, they make handbags, etc., etc. So they have a complete range of home textiles and fashion accessories made out of this bark of the fig tree.
Right, so we're seeing examples from Asia, Africa, and all over the world, and we also hope to inspire you to start being part of this approach. Okay, let's move on to maybe the second direction, which is engineering nature. We call this from the lab. So this involves technological, chemical processes, which obviously are high tech and often happen in labs. People who develop materials, they actually go to DNA or molecule or bacterial level to actually create a new material from that. And let's see some examples here. Cool.
Yes, we have another movie here. And
coconut water.
Coconut water, company called Malai.
Okay, so one example of using organic bacterial cellulose to make a new biocomposite for different applications. I think very cool. And who would have thought that this was possible just from the milk of the coconut? And obviously they've been very cleverly looking at options from the lab and seeing how they could take that chemical substance and use it into new materials. By the way, also a very nice movie here where you can just sit and let yourself be interviewed as the business owner or brand owner, and then the movie shows the process. Very different from the previous one where we saw the chair and just music, and we saw the chair growing. Also a very strong way of communicating your concept. There's different ways of telling stories, and also look at that today. How can I tell my story, and what is the most impactful kind of way of doing so? Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, we have another one, a company that makes a special material out of wood pulp, which they turn into backpacks.
Okay, let's see it. So what they're trying to do is wood pulp into new textile fibers. And what's so interesting to us here is that it's an actual collaboration. So Spinova is actually let's say the lab element developing the material, and Bergons is the brand who makes it into cool contemporary products for the market. So this also tells you that if you are an exporter in your own right, or a brand, you can also innovate through a collaboration with somebody more specialized in material development. And they are an example of this. You can't do everything yourself, and sometimes you can also outsource your sustainable needs. And in this case, two companies found each other and are now telling the story together. So they're actually giving you a little bit of insight into the chain and into how they do it through branding themselves together. And I think that could also be a model for some of you, where you don't have the time and your day-to-day marketing pressure is very high, but maybe you could find a more material-based manufacturer who could actually collaborate with you on sustainable innovation. This is why we also wanted to show you this one. Think about collaborations.
Yes, and the big advantage is you both do what you're best at. So you are really reinforcing each other's efforts here.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on. Why is it also a little bit known already? Huh? Why am I saying that?
Well, the story here is, of course, we're talking about textile dyeing, which is one of the most polluting activities in the world. So many people have been trying to solve this from many angles. And you could say that this is one of the solutions that has been currently there. But I was also mentioning, for instance, that fungi style type of dyeing. But it's important, the textile industry being one of the most polluting industries in the world, rivaling the oil industry. It is indeed important to find alternatives for all these processes in order to become more sustainable.
Exactly. And you know, the boring element is, of course, that many of you sitting there right now are actually doing this, using natural materials, natural dyes. I have a few companies that I work with who are very good at that already. So in that sense, it almost seems like big business is now discovering what you have done for ages and are still doing from your craft culture. And in that sense, it is old news. But what's really new about it is, of course, the scale of doing this. These people provide dyes to the whole of the garment industry worldwide, and also to interior textile industry. So in your case, most of your output is relatively small and goes into more niche areas in different industries. But these people service the whole world, the whole textile industry globally. So the scale at which this happens is the innovative element to it. And for that, of course, they have to synthesize, they have to use chemical processes in order to get the dye from the natural materials. So here the scale is the surprising element and innovative element. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, there's another one here, Appleskin.
It's so suitable in its tone of voice for its target group, this particular young consumer. So really take an example from this, how you can also be funny and really peppy and like turbo in your story. And the other thing, of course, is that they're really tapping into this the need for more vegan types of leather. What's wrong with leather? Why are people trying to change leather, Remco? Is there anything wrong with leather?
Well, the way it's been produced is actually pulls a heavy toll on the environment.
It can.
And even though the processes are being refined and better, and they're using ETPs, so-called effluent treatment plants, to make sure that all the chemicals used in making leather are not ending up in nature, still the process as a whole is very polluting. And generally, there is some companies that do it really properly, but that's a minority.
Cool. And of course, the other angle could be that we're all looking for more animal friendly, as it's called, cruelty-free products, and therefore moving towards a more vegan product generally. So there are two angles there that are interesting in this example. And the sneakers are also, of course, very cool. Okay.
Yes. The one remark I have, though, is that you saw that the material was applied on cotton. So in order to make this a truly sustainable product, they should use organic cotton. I'm not sure if Womsch is doing that, but just as a side remark, Case.
Cool. Well, that again points to the fact that it is a process. Just as we saw Daniel climbing his wall towards perfect sustainability, everybody is taking the next step in their process and in their approach towards sustainability. So yes, I'm sure you're making a very strong point, and this could even be something that they are also looking at right now. So don't be afraid to take the next step, communicate it clearly, what you're doing, and maybe also what you're not doing yet. I mean, also if you remember the Bergans example, they also said we're trying to do this and we're trying to do that, and just be honest and transparent about what you're really doing, and don't say things that are actually not true.
No, you're basically taking your buyer along on a journey, and that also is a more longer term perspective.
Cool. Okay, now we move into more familiar territory, which is waste. We have we have already long accepted that waste should not necessarily be waste in the end of the cycle, but waste could be seen as a new resource, a new material, starting a new cycle. And let's see some examples of that. We have a few movies and a few other examples for you again.
Yes, this is the one about PET bottles. We have something to say about that also, but let's first look at the movie.
We're being a little bit proud of our Dutch design. This is the Dutch brand. Yeah, what's the discussion around PET? I remember we were having lots of discussions in the ethical style guide jury about PET as a new material for innovation. What can we say about this?
Well, the debate is actually that PET bottles are perfectly recycled into new PET bottles. So why would you want to turn it into a textile material, like in this example, when you can basically recycle it back into its initial product again? And that's been the discussion, more or less. So
yeah,
here is being debated. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. No, in some cultures and some countries, this is actually true. It's almost like already a closed loop system where I think if I look at my country, I think almost like 96% of PET is being recycled and produced into new PET bottles. So there you could ask yourself, is it still useful to take that out of that cycle and make other products from it? But of course, in other countries where you don't have that system yet, then maybe it still makes sense, right?
Yes, then it does, I would say.
So maybe in some cases, you have to look at your waste and say, okay, does it make sense to use this waste? Is it not already like perfectly collected and reproduced? And in other cases, you could say, yeah, I mean, there's not that system yet, so let me use it. And this could be one argument. We're not criticizing this brand in any kind of way because they were really forerunners at the time. But you could now say we're also making progress in how we see sustainability develop. And especially from the waste point of view, you sometimes can ask yourself, is it worth it? Does it make sense? And here we could conclude it can make sense, but maybe in different contexts, more or less sense. That's why we want to show you these examples. But the chairs are fantastic.
Yes, well, there you see that, which has been a big change also, is that these products used to be designed in a more or less crappy way in the very, very early stages. And here you see the design is 100% fantastic. And that also helps sell your message here.
Yeah, and for this brand, the next step could be, okay, we're moving to ocean plastic, a little bit more challenging type of waste for them to kind of nudge a little bit higher.
Yeah, but like you said, it's a process, so that could indeed be a very good next step for this company. Yeah, so we move to the next one, Case?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, more wood pulp.
A lot of boxes are being ticked here. The scale, this is of course like a huge part of big industry. This brand is all over the world in all the industries, not just fashion, but also home, textiles, anywhere. So the scale, big industry, trying something. Yeah, and I think also they give the context of why they think they should contribute more. They're showing the pollutive side of textiles, which obviously they've been part of for quite a long time themselves. And so they're giving us one of their drivers. And they're also emphasizing that they are not just creating a more sustainable product, but also a sustainable system. So they talk about closed loop, and they're trying to not just look at how does the product perform and how biodegradable is it, but they're also looking at, okay, our production system, can we also reduce pollution and reuse everything in our system, including water, which is such a big issue in textile production. So also they look at the system part of sustainability, which I think that's why we wanted to show you this as well. Okay.
Yes. Let's yeah?
Sorry, you.
Yes, you could say they have a holistic approach, and that's in the end, that is what you want to work towards.
Exactly. And this is a big player. So the Tencel has even been branded as a new sustainable material. Tencel is a household name now in industry. Okay, let's do a few examples from us very quickly.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
gonna, the
Cool.
link is here, but this is quite a long movie and we're strapped for time. So
Okay,
I'll describe very quickly what Cyclo Yarns from Bangladesh is doing. This is actually a spinning mill in Bangladesh that uses all the scrap textiles from the garments industry in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has the second largest garment industry in the world. So you can imagine there's a lot of cut-offs, a lot of waste. And what they do, they crush all these waste products and they respin it into new yarn. And the good thing is, and this is something we can also discuss with Chris later on, but that this has been officially certified according to the global recycle standard. And that's very important because one of the issues we find very often is that we use an upcycled material and it's very hard to get it certified because it's not clear where it's actually coming from. So that's Cyclo Yarns in Bangladesh. Here there's something from Cambodia Case.
Yeah, this one, they are using vintage wood and porcelain materials, which are ending up in secondhand trade, but they are upcycling it. And if you click another time, you see another example of what they're doing is they're using very cool secondhand fabrics, mostly from Japan, with cool embroidery on it. I mean, this is for A&D in Cambodia. This is their DNA. This is what they are. They are always looking at, okay, what vintage materials can we upcycle into new, cool, contemporary offers? Compliments to you guys.
Then we have another example from Uganda, where they use magazine paper, and it's quite a traditional technique in that country in East Africa to make beads out of old magazines. And what they've done, they've taken it to another level by adding a lot of design and making it into a range of fashion accessories and also lighting fixtures. And I have to say, I really like how it looks.
Me too, me too. Compliments for all you guys. So we see like across the continents, people are making efforts. You are making efforts to also join in on this huge sustainable party. Talking about joining in, we have Chris on board. Chris Kuhleman, he's the organizer of Circular Textile Days. Lots of practical experience in actually fashion or textile production worldwide. He's also a lecturer at Amsterdam University in Applied Sciences. And Chris found the time to give us a few of his insights today. Chris, thank you and welcome. You can show your face if you want. I think it's nicer if we see your actual face.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. You hear me, I guess, huh?
Yeah, Chris, loud and clear. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Thank you for having me and for the nice introduction.
Cool. Okay. So you're organizing the Circular Textile Days. What are circular textiles anyway? What are they? How do we see this?
Oh, that's a nice one because actually we've set a standard in the Netherlands, which is just a report saying something about let's say the categories of circular textiles. But also now on a European level, a new standard is being developed, and that goes, let's say, a little bit further again. So far we have been talking about using recycled materials for the products, for the end products, and using refurbished materials for refurbished products. So it's actually mainly about using the material that you would like to keep in the chain as long as possible, or in the loop as long as possible for the products. And that's actually the ultimate goal, is to keep materials as long as possible in use before it becomes waste.
Cool.
So you could use post-consumer waste, and you could use, of course, a production waste. And I've seen some very nice examples just passing by when I dropped in, and I probably have missed a few, but they were very nice examples.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. So Today we've tried to be very inspirational for all of us. Also to say to all of you there listening and part of our followers, you can also do this. But Chris is coming in, and he's also coming in partly from the point of view of you can do it, but you maybe must also now start doing this because there's EU regulations coming up. Can you point out a few to us, Chris? A few must-do things for the near future.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot coming up. We have a roadmap to 2030, 2050. Actions should be taken in many aspects. We are talking about digital product passports, talking about eco-designing, talking about phasing out or tackling the problem with microplastics. So there's a lot going on, and also, of course, we try to tackle the greenwashing or green hushing or window dressing or whatever you call this by this green claim directive that is coming up. So it is definitely a case to be prepared. Yeah.
Cool. Let's go into that a little bit more later. So this is all like EU law, becoming EU law, so obligatory to organizations, industry in the EU. Now, most of our followers here, the SMEs, are not in the EU, so does it even concern them, or is it like irrelevant, or is it relevant?
Oh, I think it's definitely relevant because buyers, brands, companies that purchase or have production in other countries than in the EU, they need data. They need to prove things they are stating. They need to prove their claims, and they want to, for example, for a digital product passport, they must have a lot of information. Where does the material come from? What is it composed of exactly? How is the process working? So a lot more data is required, and also for these green claims, you were just now talking about a recycling standard. You need a certification, maybe on one hand, or on the other hand, if a certificate is not yet in place, maybe you need more information about the complete process. We also have programs that require insight in the complete chain of production. So chain of custody is then involved. So you need to prove.
And Chris, is it then, for instance, if you have a certain product or material for which there is no official certification available yet, does it suffice that you give insight in the process? Because I can imagine, for instance, we got one of the question we got via the chat box is we discussed the material called bark cloth, which is a natural material, the bark of a fig tree. I mean, do companies face issues with EU customs also when it comes to importing or exporting that to the EU?
I'm not sure what kind of problem they expect for the customs. Anyhow, the marking of the content should be honest and should be clear, I guess. Yeah. And for certification, if there is something new that where no real certificate exists for, like actually the standard of circular textiles that we have developed in the Netherlands, we also say, okay, there is no real certificate. Certificates could help in this sense. So if there is one part that you could have a certificate for, like the GRS certificate, that could help. But for the parts that it is not there available, you could give an insight in, or you should give an insight in how the processes work, where the material comes from. So at what place did you buy it? Where did it go? So you should give transparency about the complete production process. if you at least want to prove that it is really that kind of product.
Cool. So it starts with an admin system, right? You know, traceability starts with knowing where your stuff comes from, and also describing it in your systems, and through bills of material or spec sheets, and adding any tests or any kind of verification or certifications that you can add. It starts with your system, admin system.
Definitely. And you see it also happening in regular goods. We want to have more transparency. We want to offer also the consumer a certain transparency, and that is, let's say, one of the points that brands are promoting. We are honest and fair and like to show what is happening, or like at least to know their supply chain.
Cool. Okay. So now one of the questions is, okay, this is all very well, but the consumer isn't paying a premium price for it. How do we deal with that? Remco, this is for you to answer.
Of course, if you ask the consumer, do you want to pay more? Everyone says no. Yeah. So, and we can say this is a problem. We can also say, okay, how can we solve this? How can we deal with that? And I think for these kind of, let's say, flaws in the system, also on one hand, the legislation is there to help us forward, and that is also why the legislation comes up. But what you also see is consumer platforms where consumers can decide which shop will I go to, which shop is offering more sustainable or fair products than other shops. So that is also going on, but that's quite limited still, but it will develop further, I guess.
Yeah, and that also is a process, consumer awareness, and then from your end, adding the value so that and describing the value through, you know, showing really what's unique about it, adding design to it. Remember the Cosio, funny kind of cutlery. So adding your design to it, really showing and highlighting the value, additional value to the consumer, and then slowly people will be more perceptive. But yes, the consumer by nature is very selfish, very self-centered. They will not necessarily pay a premium to more sustainable products, and so they leave that to industry. It's quite a comfortable situation from the consumer end because you know, they have the buying power in our industry, and so yes, we get used to and increasing our scale and productivity and design and stories to highlight that additional value that the consumer will then find. Chris,
to say something in favor of the consumer, often you don't know which one is better. Even a more expensive product, you don't know, is it really better than the less expensive product? I know companies, Zeeman, who are, as an example, who are doing some things very well and have very cheap products.
Cool.
So it's hard to tell, but anyhow, I think legislation like the Green Claim Directive, like digital passports, giving more information, giving more transparency, and knowing the supply chain better, also to prevent child labor or other social issues.
Cool.
So I think it should be there.
You mentioned the Green Claim Directive. Can you explain a little bit more? Can you go into detail there? What is it and how?
Yeah, well, actually, what we see happening is that companies who say something, for example, CO2 neutral, this is a CO2 neutral product. What does it mean? Can you substantiate it? Can you say more about it than that? So you have to have some kind of proof how you came to that conclusion that it was CO2 neutral, or what does it mean exactly? That's the first thing. And often you see already that the meaning is quite vague. So these kind of statements you cannot place anymore on your product. You cannot say anymore about your product. You have to be realistic and to give proof. So therefore you need this certifications, or insights in your supply chain.
Cool. Okay. And then, so this means you have to give your definition of what you're saying, and then also actually prove it.
Yes.
And maybe even create that action plan towards making your claim fully, maybe in the future. So it's not like just making a statement, but also action.
Yes, of course. And I think it's not all done at once. So you have to start early. And that is also I think the message to the listeners here, start, act, be prepared. Because also what I see a lot here, when there is something new happening, like now the 1st of July, extended producers responsibility has been introduced on the Dutch market. And you see a lot of companies, they still, in this case, it are the brands, they still have to do a lot. They are so far behind. And then it can be a bit disruptive for them. It can be a bit, overwhelming as well. Whoa, what should we do, and who should we connect to? And I think making also these new connections, being informed, and new collaborations, and forget about some parts of the competition that you have with others. So join hands and work together on these kind of topics is very important.
Cool. So that we had a few examples also in our presentation about collaborations, where if you join hands with maybe somebody else in some other place in your value chain, then that can be actually very effective and create the impact you need also in terms of sustainability.
Definitely. And we see it at the Circular Textile Days, where we bring together parties. So we have brands, we have recyclers, collectors, we have producers, manufacturers, I mean. So and also software suppliers who can all, deliver. Everyone can deliver some part of the solution, and the combination of companies that work together, that is the factor of success for the future.
Cool. I like what you're saying in the sense of that every part of that value chain can deliver part of the solution. I'm quoting you actually. So also you SMEs exporting and manufacturing, you're also part of a chain towards, in this case, the EU. And so you're a very important part of the chain of that importer who's facing all this new regulations soon. And therefore you can help them perform and comply. So yeah, don't think that you have no power. Actually, you have a lot of power, because those importers still need your products. And so it's just now you need to sit with them, talk to them, and say, how can we collaborate and move into a more sustainable future and industry together? Because one of the statements, I think, Remco, remember when we were interviewing somebody recently, they were also saying sustainability is soon becoming a competitive sourcing, a queue for sourcing. Buyers, importers will source, and those who are more sustainable than others might actually win this whole sourcing race.
Yeah, you actually help your buyer to solve a very serious sourcing problem for them. And if you're able to supply your product in such a way that it's easy for them to sell them in the EU, you are ahead. It's as simple as that.
Cool. Okay. So a few takeaways from what you have been saying, Chris, is yeah, it's all about proof and not about trust anymore. You really have to prove your point, and that is linked to actually verification. Have a system that is transparent and open, and supporting it by certifications and other verification testing where possible. So prove, not trust, is kind of the new paradigm in our market. And the second thing that you also said is, yeah, it's a competitive advantage if you are more advanced already in terms of sustainability, because soon this is no longer just inspirational stuff that you can choose to do, but it's really becoming a must do. How soon is this coming, Chris?
everything is running at the moment. So the goals for 2030 and for 2050, they are well, let's say there's a lot to do before we are there, and they are quite ambitious. So yeah, I think it starts now.
It's started already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okie dokie. Thank you, Chris, for that. Let's try to finish with a few further questions and tips. Remco, next slide. Okay, so let's think about this whole session today. I mean, why are people doing this? Why should they be doing it? What are the drivers behind sustainable innovation that we have heard? So give us a few reasons that you have heard for people to do this. Why are people doing this? And you as well. Okay, what have we heard? Like, think Cosiol, they were doing this because they really saw a business opportunity. Yeah, they took the time through the pandemic to think about things, and so one of their drivers was commercial success. By being more sustainable, and now they have this sustainable plastic. Let's say they are beating competition. So that's one of the drivers. Is commercial success. What other drivers have we heard, Remco?
Well, Piñatex was a beautiful example. The lady who initiated that, it was out of personal motivation. Like you already illustrated, she was really shocked about the effects of leather on the environment. And she decided to develop a sustainable alternative, which took her 7 years. So there was a very personal driver.
Yeah, exactly. Designers, they also want to make a statement, talk to the world about their vision for the future. So they are also more future oriented, and yeah, they see it as the purpose of in their life to actually point us towards future developments. That's typically what designers and trend people do. Those are one of the drivers. Why should you go into this?
And another one you could say, Case, is basically what Chris has been illustrating. If you would like to export to the EU, there's no escaping rules and regulations.
No, and you better have a positive attitude towards it and see it as a positive challenge rather than as a terrible must-do that is hanging over like a rain cloud hanging over your head. It's not that. For those who are innovative and take initiative, you'll have a new future, I think, and longevity in your business. So yesterday we were talking to somebody from a bank, and they actually also say, yeah, more sustainable business will also last longer, and therefore for us as investors, there are less risk. So sustainability is also very much part of being future-proof, we feel. Okay, we heard many different types of innovators. We saw you innovating. No, you should go back. Yeah, so you are innovating. We are really encouraging you to do more of that and to let yourself be heard to us and to the world. We also saw designers, we saw big business, we saw small business, we saw concept startups, established businesses, and even we saw Messe Frankfurt as a big player in the trade fair industry, innovating. They are now making this business, the sustainability part of business conversation. And so lots of people are doing it, and I hope today will be the day that you are also joining in. Keep it going. Next one. Almost through. So yeah, this is the point Chris was making, part of the points he was making. It's becoming a must-do, and you really have to walk the talk. You cannot do greenwashing or anymore. You really have to show what you're doing and also prove what you're saying, and you also really have to do it, because otherwise you lose your competitive position in the EU.
Yes, and proving what you do is also part of your communication, hence also part of your marketing. So this can work for you in many ways.
Cool. And hopefully today that's been inspirational as well. We saw so many different ways of telling stories. in very short movies, like 1.5 minutes. That should be inspirational for all of you to also do it in your own way. Tell your own story. Don't use fancy words. Just tell your own story from your own context, and that will be very impressive. All right. What else? Make or buy. Next one. Yeah. So this is the idea that really you can do it yourself. You can create a sustainable system in your own system, in your factory or with your producers. You could also collaborate. So make or buy, do it yourself, or buy is outsource it and work with somebody who's really has the time and the tools and everything else available to really do this for you, and then collaborate. We saw a few collaborations today, and we hope that's also inspirational to you, because this is real. It's real. People are doing it in the industry. They're not going it alone, but they are trying to join that value chain into a more impactful chain. Next one. Okay, yeah. Return on investment. Yes, there's cost involved, time involved, investment. Koziol was a great example here. They used the 2 years of the pandemic with no business to think about new strategies and to develop those new strategies. So when you do this, you also have to look at the cost side of it, but also of the profit side. Because you remember the movie that I was in at the beginning, we were talking about merging the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit. In the end, it has to work in the market. One of the people in the question box was also saying, yeah, but what if the consumer doesn't pay? Well, in the end, that's your marketing challenge. So it needs to work in the market against the cost that you have to put in. Always think about that. Don't, in your case, don't waste too much time or energy yourself and lose your market position because you're innovating. You have to do it and return on investment. Next one. Yeah. So we talked about waste. Remember, we had Remco and me had a discussion about PET. He said, yes, let's do it. I said, no, let's not do it. And we were both right. You have to look at what type of waste is available in your context, and does it make sense to use it? In this case, we used PET because in some of our Western countries, we already have a very perfect collection system. So maybe then you should maybe not do it. Other examples are maybe using recycled plastic from the street waste. It makes a lot of sense, but what if it degrades really fast and then your products end up in the European market and they really have poor quality or they fall apart? So also think of the quality aspect of using waste. So don't waste your time. Use waste that really works from all of those angles. Next one, we're almost there, people. I hope you still have the energy. This is about product and system. Remember, big business is trying to become closed loop, as they call it. So they not only look at, okay, can I offer a sustainable product and prove that it's sustainable, but can I offer a sustainable system as well, and reduce pollution or really have a closed system in my manufacturing? And so an integrated approach towards offering sustainable products and sustainable system, look at that as well. Those could be different steps you take in your approach towards climbing that wall towards becoming a sustainable brand.
Yes, and this only has to concern your raw material, but you could, for instance, also use solar power to create that electrical power that you need to run some of your machinery and maybe even your office.
Exactly. Anything helps. You know, nobody's expecting you to be perfect. Also, EU regulation in the end is not asking you to be perfect, because in fact the EU regulation itself is still developing itself and seeing what is doable and what isn't. But be honest, be clear, take your next step and describe it as such. And that's the final tip we have for you is, next one, market your benefits. So we saw lots of cool movies and great explanations of what you are offering to the market. You remember that in the very first movie, I asked Koziol, what's so remarkable about you that you're so confident in in shouting to the world that we are the sustainable brand. I said, where does this confidence come from? And then he explains, yeah, I mean, we are confident and we have control over the system. So we want to tell the world that we are offering added value now in terms of a new plastic. So communicate, people. Don't just do something and then hide it to the world, but communicate to the world and be loud and confident and have your own tone of voice. Don't use fancy words that you normally wouldn't use, just your own images and your own words. Cool. We're at the end. We have a thank you slide, which I would like to show. Thank you, Rainer, A, B, C, D Concepts for doing research and creation. Mr. Frankfurt, Daniel, Koziol, Benjamin, he was the interviewer with me. Sabine was also the organization behind that. Chris, thank you so much. It was short, but really to the point. Thank you so much, Kareem. Yeah, really grateful having you. You can follow Chris, of course, on LinkedIn. Just go and spam him on LinkedIn. He has a lot of information to offer you. So feel free to find him at LinkedIn. Karine, thank you so much, part of our team. She was hidden throughout this presentation, but she's really been very important for us. And then CBI, Market Intelligence team, you facilitated all of that. And finally, all of you there listening in, talking to us, asking questions. We picked up a few. We couldn't pick up all the questions, but we'll look at them again. And if we missed some of the points, we will come back to you. But thank you for engaging. And finally, the most important engagement is not today during this webinar and just talking. It's showing yourself in the market and moving towards social and environmental sustainability in a profitable, marketable way. Hopefully that point came through, and we see you soon.
Thanks, Kees.
Simona, do you want to do the final word?
No, thank you, Kees. And I'd only just emphasize everything you said. Thank you to the audience for your interest and your insightful questions and comments. Indeed, as Kees mentioned, we weren't able to get to all of them. So we will put together a short document where we'll pick out some of the questions that we can answer and share it with you. But first, you'll be receiving an email from our communication department with the link to this video, as well as the slides that we promised at the start of the webinar. And you can expect the answers to the questions to come up over the coming weeks. So thank you again to all of you, Remco and Kees, of course, for this interesting webinar. I'm sure the audience must have found it very interesting. I learned a lot from it. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a nice rest of the day. Thank you for attending.
Cool. Bye-bye.
Bye.